Hey guys, it's VT back with another top 10. You guys love them, I like making them, so here we are. And this time it's a top 10 best heroes to play without allies. And this technically does include actually still playing with your signature ally because, it's just ignoring a card you have doesn't really make sense to me. So all these entries are still including their signature ally in being played with everything we're talking about. But other than that, what does it mean to be, a best hero without allies? It means not adding allies into your deck, and that means you don't need to chump block, so you have to be defensively strong. So if you're not blocking with allies, you need to be able to look after yourself. Secondly, you need to have a versatile kit, because you need to attack, forward, everything like that usually, and not all heroes can do that without help. Not all aspects can do that without help. Adaptability is very similar to versatility here, but it's more in terms of, you get a random encounter card, what's it going to be? Do you have to draw into the right card and be lucky, to have it at the right time to deal with something? Do you have to build up counters? Do you need to play some upgrades before you can deal with it? Or can you just adapt and deal with it? Because allies are always ready to attack, fort, or defend. Very, very flexible, versatile, and adaptable. So we're looking kind of to cover those kind of roles here for the best results. And lastly, I want to say these choices are not based on power, but if you are really defensively strong and can kind of deal with all different things pretty reliably, you're probably a strong character. So there's going to be more strong characters on here than I would like for a non-power list, but that's just how it's going to be. And we're starting with a triple. I'm going to talk about 3 characters kind of at once because I think it's more interesting to talk about the characters closest to number 1, so we'll spend more time on those. So at number 10, we have Drax, and I think a lot of people like playing Drax without many allies anyway. He's very good without too many of them, within what he wants to do. He wants to get hit in the face, get some counters, and then he wants to hit the villain really, really hard. If an ally blocks, he doesn't get his vengeance counters, or if he's at maximum vengeance counters, he won't get card draw, and he really likes card draw, so Drax doesn't want many allies anyway. Now, this does hurt his forwarding potential, particularly in solo, but in multiplayer, doesn't really matter. And in solo, if you plan to go fast, often doesn't matter anyway. Next up, we have Vision. Vision has this intangible form where he takes 2 less damage from any attacks coming at him, whether it's minions or villains, which already makes him pretty tanky. But add on to that, he can have a 5 recovery stat if he goes Ultra Ego while in dense form. That's pretty huge. Not to mention he does have a defense event, even if getting it at the right time is slightly trickier than I would like. But what is also kind of the elephant in the room here, but also a great point in his favor of being really good without adding allies into his deck, is that he has Vivian, who's one of the best signature allies we have still, I think. Just very, very flexible, can do whatever you need. And with Hickory Branch Lane, you just get her back basically every turn. If you build for it, if you plan for it, if you aim for it. But, that kind of goes against the spirit of this video a little bit. Because this video was inspired by, somebody in my Discord was looking for some kind of, I don't know, sort of advice, some pointers, some input on one of their decks. And I was like, really just think what you need here is allies. And they're like, I don't want allies. And I'm like, that's fair. I think a lot of people do not want to add allies or rely too much on them. And that's kind of the point of this video. And I think that's completely fair. Unfortunately, allies are very, very good, and they fill a role that not many other cards do in Marvel Champions. They are kind of a mid-term kind of, mid-length effect. Events are instant, upgrades tend to be permanent, but, smaller effects. And then allies kind of do a little bit for a few turns, and then they go away. And that makes them very, very easy to rely on, makes them very reliable, and characters have to adapt and survive without that, which is really what we're going for in this video. Probably should have said that at the start. Number 8 is Deadpool, and he's such a weird character, and he doesn't really care about damage unless it happens to be indirect damage. He's taking it as an encounter card, and he's got no allies out because he's probably Ultra Ego from being, quote-unquote defeated before, and then he's gone. So he might want allies to soak indirect damage, but if the scenario doesn't have indirect damage, or, he's Deadpool, maybe he's just winning too fast to ever see those cards come up, it doesn't matter to him. And if you do lose with Deadpool, at least in a solo game, you can just restart very easily and, maybe win in a couple more turns again. You'll be fine. So there's a case for Deadpool to be number 1. Just win super fast, ignore all damage, doesn't even matter. And yeah, there you go, you won. But then there's a case that, oops, wrong encounter card, you lost. And maybe you wish you had that ally in that case, in that scenario. So bit of a weird one. Could be number 1. Putting him at number 8. Getting into the real meat of the video now, the characters I'm more excited to talk about, we have Bishop, one of the newest characters in Marvel Champions. He came in the latest expansion, Age of Apocalypse, and he's really fun, but more than that, he's got Bishop's Uniform, which is a 2-cost upgrade, and basically, you exhaust it to heal damage for, equal to the amount of resources in your hand after you resolve your energy absorption ability. That ability you resolve after taking damage. So long story short, you get punched in the face, you have to discard cards, you get a bunch of resource cards from doing that, and then you exhaust your uniform, and for all those resource cards you've gathered, you just get healed up, and quite often, sometimes you can heal for more damage than you took in the first place, which means he's very, very good at surviving. But he's also very flexible, adaptable, versatile, however you want to say it. 2 fort, 2 attack. His attack card readies him up, so then he can, attack and then maybe get some forwarding out of that card on its own. There's some really interesting things you can do with him. His defense card is really good, but he also has 2 signature allies as well. So, okay, maybe he's slightly against the spirit of this video, but you don't have to rely on chump blocking, which I think is the main thing people don't like about playing with allies. I just don't want to keep blocking with all these allies, throw them out there, block, throw them out there, block. And he doesn't do that because he can reuse his allies to an extent, or if he does, end up using them, he can flip down, get them back. They're kind of his teammates, he can kind of make use of them rather than just block all the time with them, because he doesn't really ever want to do that, if he's got his uniform out at least, which is his big game plan, his best card. And yeah, so I think Bishop's a really, really good choice if you want to play a character and not rely on having, lots of allies in your deck. And up next, I just want to say a quick word from our sponsor, me. So I have opened Patreons and YouTube membership for this channel, a couple of months ago now, I think, and I haven't really mentioned it much since. So I just wanted to shout it out that if you want to support the channel, you can. And if you don't want to, timestamps at the bottom, just move on with the video and no problem. And don't do this unless you can, afford it. You have disposable income and you really want to support the channel. Since opening these up, I've had a lot of support. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've been trying to put out more videos, which I've really enjoyed, by the way. For you guys, and I've got, better equipment, better lighting. I'm no longer in the dark. We've got a camera that can now record games that doesn't look, ultra blurry all the time. And it's just really good. All these things have really helped. I'm trying to put the money back into the channel in different ways. And if you go for the Marvelous Champion tier, I will build you a deck. There's a Google form somewhere. And if you can't find it, just poke me on Discord. Discord links below as well. And we'll make something happen. And each month, that you're a YouTube member or on Patreon, I'll make you a deck with a little write-up. And, you can go on Reddit or Discord somewhere and people will help you with decks. It's not like a big special thing, but it's just a little bonus for supporting the channel from me. So thank you very much. At number 6, we have Shadowcat, and I think this will surprise people. I think people maybe expected to see her at number 1 or 2 on this list, but the thing is her Obligation and Nemesis set are horrific, and that can really mess with you, and allies are kind of the best answer to both of them, which I'll go into. So what I'm trying to say here is that in a perfect world where everything goes Shadowcat's way, she probably is the best on this list to play with no allies. But in reality, if things go wrong for her, they can go really, really wrong. And I think that is kind of the big factor here. So the Obligation says you cannot attack, defend, or change mass form. You do just exhaust to get rid of it, but it's very, very likely that you exhaust it to defend, unless you're running in protection, which has its other issues we'll come back to, although obviously it's very good. So if you've exhausted to defend, you can't even just get rid of this immediately. And even if you could, it doesn't flip you to alter ego like a lot of obligations. So you have to manually go down, then exhaust, which basically just shuts you off attacking or defending for the rest of that, round, for the end of the villain phase and the next hero phase coming up after that. And that means that if there are any other attacks from other encounter cards, you can't do anything about it. You just have to take it in the face, which is very bad on a 9 hit point character. If you had minions down that were really pressing to deal with, you can't do that. I've had this come up and basically my entire hand is dead. Yeah, if you've got forwarding cards, you can still fort, but some of those require you to change form, and you can now cannot change your mass form, and the things that trigger it, like attacking and defending, you can't do them, so it can just shut you down. Allies are basically the only thing you can still do that turn, which is why I think ally builds with Shadowcat are actually very good and largely underrated, because this Obligation is potentially a game ender, honestly. It's so annoying, especially if you then flip down to Alter Ego, you ready up, and then the next villain phase, you get exhausted by an encounter card, and you cannot get rid of it again. It's so annoying. The Nemesis set is maybe not as bad, but still very, very bad, because you are basically permanently confused until you took White Queen out. Let's say you're playing one of those protection builds and you never need to exhaust, although that Obligation will still kind of shut you down a lot. Let's say you are running all these defense cards. You might not see your attack cards as reliably. You probably still see one, but you might not. If you don't have allies out to help you take out White Queen, you can just get stuck. This is more for solo play in this instance because, other players could help you defeat White Queen and so on. But you can just be permanently confused until you get rid of her, which can take an extra turn. It's just a little bit dicey, and the easy way to do it, just have allies on the board. If you've got allies on the board when this hits, you can take White Queen out of the picture, no matter what you have drawn in your hand. And that's one of the big strengths of allies. And I think this Nemesis set just being so brutal, and the Obligation especially annoys me. Really, I find it very difficult to recommend people to play Shadowcat without allies, just in case this one sort of thing comes up and then they're in a really bad situation. But she's still very, very good at it. You know, there's like 55 heroes now or something. And yeah, being top 6, very, very strong. And in a perfect world, probably is the top 1. I think a lot of people will, you know, say I probably should have put her there. But I've had things go really, really wrong a lot of the time. I played a lot of Shadowcat, and allies make it a lot better. And allies make everything better in the game. They are very, very powerful card type. But yeah, number 6 is as high as I can recommend her. At number 5, we have X-23, another fairly recent hero in Marvel Champions, and she can defend for 2, and then she's got this response. After she takes any amount of damage, ready her. So if you get hit for 3 or 4 points of damage and you defend it for 2, you get to ready up again. It basically means you are very, very good at defending, you know, stopping damage, because you can stop damage and then you're still ready to go into the hero phase. If you get attacked again, defend a second time. You might be exhausted, but, you know, it's a way to survive if you need it, which is very, very powerful. You could just get hit for 2 and not get the ready, but you're still not taking any damage for defending, so you might as well be Shadowcat at that point. So I don't think that's the worst outcome, honestly. And yeah, that's basically her biggest strength, not to chump block. And it's a little bit like Vision, you know, if he's in his intangible form, you know, she can stop 2 damage from a couple of different attacks potentially, which is very good. But she can also heal, and she has a signature ally. And well, Vision is very, very versatile. X-23 takes it to a completely ridiculous level where she can just deal a lots of damage or lots of forwarding from turn 1 and then every turn. And like Vision, signature ally is extremely good and lets you basically do everything even more, even crazier. And she of course has that huge recovery stat, even bigger than Vision's, even without, you know, needing to be in a certain form or anything except alter ego. But, you know, you don't have to flip down in the right mass form. So I think X-23 is a bit of a step up. I think if I was to recommend to someone to play X-23 and not add allies into their deck, I think they would just be fine. It would maybe not be as good as running a couple in there, but largely a lot of people don't run many allies in X-23 anyway, and it's because she's so good without them. Next up, we have Angel, and I had him at the number 2 spot on this list for a while. I moved him down a little bit. Let me know what you guys think. But Angel, well, in Archangel form, he has 3 defense, which is already really good. And he can, you know, he's got those 2 different hero forms. He's got Alter Ego, which pings him for a heal when he goes there. But because of Metamorphosis, which is his form change card, he can, you know, flip down, get that heal, even exhaust to recover, then flip back to hero form on either side. That's a very powerful tool. He's got a good defense card, particularly if he's in Archangel form. And he's got stuns as well with Adaptive Plumage. So defense, stuns, easy access to healing, free defense, and a lot of hit points as well. Just makes Angel a very difficult character to defeat. If you're playing in Protection, he's really good for Perseverance and things. It's quite interesting how many of these characters on this list actually have different forms and things, although I believe Angel is the last one we're going to look at. But it's definitely an advantage to be able to have this kind of like defensive mode on all these characters. So that's pretty fun. So Angel, very, very solid character for this kind of thing. Because a lot of his events do different things in different forms and he can change his forms easily, it means you can kind of adapt to anything. So he really has that versatility going for him as well, just like X-23 and all the next characters you're going to see on this list. At number 3, we have Venom, and I think some people probably saw this coming. He's got really good stats. He, you know, with his guns, his pistols, he can do anything, including defend. He's got this Modi gun, which is kind of acts like an ally. You can, you know, attack with it, fought with it. It's a crazy gun, you know. It's just like basically another hero to exhaust. You got Project Rebirth, which is really, really good healing in Alter Ego, so that just helps keep him alive. He's got Grasping Tendrils, which stops 2 attacks. So, you know, survivability is covered. The versatility with increasing different stats using his Modi gun, really well covered. Also just has 12 hit points for some reason. So he's very difficult to take down and can kind of do whatever you need before you even start deck building. So it doesn't matter if you add allies or you know, events or anything. He can basically already do it, which is his big strength. He's a really powerful jack of all trades. And I think that's mostly all I got to say for Venom. He can do it all, so he doesn't really need anyone else. Speaking of jack of all trades, we've got Captain America. And Captain America and Venom are very similar in many ways because, like I say, they can kind of do whatever they need as jack of all trades. They are very defensive. They have defense events. You know, they're just very, very flexible. So Captain America, with his I Can Do This All Day ability, lets him discard a card from hand, ready up. So I can attack for 2, fought for 2. You know, I don't necessarily need an ally on the board to be able to flexibly handle something that comes in. because I can kind of flexibly do that with my stats already. You know, I can defend and attack, you know, whatever and whatever combination works really well. And in terms of blocking with allies, because obviously that's still better, even with that free defense stat, which is what he has from having his shield out, it's sometimes just better to block with an ally. And you know, probably quite a lot of the time, in all honesty, that will vary with your build as well. But guess what? He's got shield block, which is take no damage. You know, it's like, oh, I become Shadowcat for this defense for 0 cost. Heroic Strike is a good attack card that stuns, and even his Alter Ego support heals him. But his Alter Ego ability gives him a discount on playing allies. So it's really hard on a video about recommending characters to not play with allies to recommend the one who gets a discount on allies, you know, at the start of the game and whenever you need to flip. I will say if you're going, you know, for quite defensive and trying not to take damage, he doesn't actually need to flip. So I don't think it impacts him too much. He's still very, very, very good without allies, as is, you know, Venom and Angel and X23 and Shadowcat and Bishop. But he's just really, really good at it. So even though, like I say, he does get a discount on allies, just use that for your signature one once or twice a game, and he's just really good without allies. You can absolutely do it. So Captain America is a great, great choice. Before we move on to the final one, a couple of honorable mentions. I think a lot of people were maybe expecting to see Doctor Strange here, and here's the thing. The kind of hidden variable I didn't mention earlier, maybe I should have, it's not always about how good a character is without allies, but it's about what they lose by not having it. And Doctor Strange is built as a support character. So instead of playing, he wants to maybe give out 3 toughs. If you don't have allies out, it goes from being kind of an overpowered thing to kind of a normal powered thing at that point, just giving yourself 1 tough. So in that regard, he loses probably his most powerful card. His card draw is good. I mean, all his stuff, all his invocations are good. But he definitely wants multiple characters on the board. Yeah, 2, 3, 4 play. You can play him with allies, no problem. But they definitely benefit him a lot. And here's the thing. If you don't like playing with allies, you're probably doing it kind of for the challenge, that kind of thing. And you don't play Doctor Strange if you're looking for the challenge in most circumstances. So he didn't quite make this list, but there's definitely a humongously strong argument to put him on there. But that was just my preference and how I did it. So, you know, it is what it is. Magic, very similar in a way. She has lots of status cards. She can have, you know, her defense event, but more than that, she has Colossus, her signature ally, which, you know, enters play defense with a tough kind of thing, which she can step in disc at, you know, the end of her turn back onto her deck as one option. So her signature ally can block 2 attacks, basically, can be put back on and reused. So it's a little bit kind of in the vision kind of category that it's a very reusable signature ally, aside, you know, in addition to all the other things she has here. But here's the thing, she also loses a lot from not having allies, because she loves allies like Legion and Cosmo and even, you know, Hulk, Gold Balls, all these different allies, you know, across a couple of different aspects. You know, Wolfsbane and, you know, Justice, I think, has an argument as well. These characters which discard from the top of her deck, which interact with her, you know, ability to play the top card of her deck. Don't like what you have, use one of these allies. Allies are the easiest way to reliably, you know, cycle through your deck, aside from maybe, you know, Avengers Mansion. So I think she really likes to have allies, so she does extremely well without them. But again, as a character, I probably, if I'm playing Magic, I'm really gonna actually want them, so I can't really recommend her as part of this list in that regard. Then we've got a lot of web warriors here, honestly, and you know, there's a lot of characters I could have talked about. Loads of characters have good defense plans. These are not the only characters you can play without adding allies in, but the web warriors enter, you know, the web warriors enter really kind of an interesting space where the web warrior allies are so good. So do I recommend that you play them without them? Is that the best? Well, I think Ghost Spider is quite susceptible in the way that Shadowcat is into things going wrong. In fact, a lot more susceptible. And that rules her out of this list even more, in my opinion. I think the readying from the Peter Parker ally alone is huge. Card draw from just, you know, the web warrior stuff makes her response triggering just a lot more reliable, both to have the resources to do it twice across a round and also the, you know, getting the right responses to play. And Spider-Man Miles Morales, he is really, really powerful without them, but this is not a power list, you know, so he just has a lot of status cards, but again, 9 hit points. If he doesn't have the right status card up at the right time, he could get defeated. You know, Thanos, Ronan, there are some really bad times where poor Miles can get taken out without any chump blockers, definitely. But he's a very strong contender for this list as well. And SP Diarsu is probably my one that if I was going to add one onto here, it probably would be her. The thing is, depending on what order you get your interfaces, kind of affects what you can actually do every turn reliably. Very much like Quicksilver, who I also recommend with allies a lot, you know, despite being basic attack, you know, basic ability kind of focused. I think a few allies really smooth him out because you never know what stats he's going to be able to use at an effective level. Now, Special Doctor does start with, 2 in each stat here, so it's better. And, you can get Host Spider, which is very, very flexible and versatile, but it's not quite guaranteed. And because she doesn't have a very big hand size, outside of your interfaces, she doesn't have that reliability, that sort of adaptability, if you will. You only have 3 options in that hand of yours. So having allies around to, be reliable, and I didn't draw the right cards to handle this problem. Me and my allies definitely will. It just ruled her out slightly for me. But again, she's a very, very strong contender that could have made this list. So at number 1, we've got Spider-Woman. Pheromones kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Stun and confuse an enemy. There's a 2-cost card that's dealt with 2 activations completely. That can be discounted with Death Focus as well, which is crazy. Contaminant immunity, you can heal for free. That's really good survivability as well, but it also gives you a tough. So between one, pass of her deck, she has 6 potential status cards that block complete villain activations, and she'll probably, potentially could heal for 6. That's not going to happen every deck pass, especially the way, the cards fall and the situation, but the possibility is really, really strong. And she can do a lot with just her stats. So she can have different aspect cards, which, as you can see on the screen, and that can boost her stats up. It's very rare she doesn't have free defense, but she can also have free forwarding or free attack. That's almost every single turn, especially if you build for it, which makes her very, very versatile and easy to adapt to situations. But more than that, aside from, she also has readying as well to use the stats repeatedly, built into her hero kit. More than all that, she can bring 2 different aspects. So all the things that help you, not need to rely on allies like stuns and things, or confuses, or defensive cards, or healing, or other reliable things that sit around on the board, maybe some upgrades and things. She can take the best of those for having no allies from 2 aspects. And to me, that is hard to compare with. Adam Warlock maybe could have been considered for this list on a similar ground, but because he can only take 1 of each card, those kind of things become less reliable. And I think some of his best, most powerful things do rely on having allies out. So Spider-Woman just in a kind of a league of her own here, I think, compared to Captain America, who I was tempted to put here. Just the access to different, aspects can really just help her deal with anything and everything in a very, very powerful way. But honestly, any of the top 5 for me could be number 1. Someone could make that argument, and on the right day at the right time, I'd probably agree. I think X-23, Venom, Angel, Cap, as I keep talking about, all these characters really, really, really strong. But Spider-Woman for me, just super, super, super good. However you want to build her, kind of a jack of all trades as well herself, and she is more deck building reliant than Captain America and Venom as an example, comparison that we talked about here, but just so incredibly good. And it's going to be not too difficult to build her right with our allies. Just go aggression and justice is a very basic example with plenty of attacks and forwarding. Got a few confused, got maybe addition to pheromones. Worst case, you just go Ultra Ego and heal, but you're really going to be fine anyway. Even against Steady and Stalwart, you still got contaminant immunity. Pheromones isn't actually bad against Steady, but you can get Tufts and healing and different aspect cards to deal with those villains. It's just very, very strong, and I love Spider-Woman, so I'm pretty happy I got to put her at number 1 on one of these lists. That about does it for our list here. That was it. These are the top 10, and we could argue for certain other characters on here. There's a lot of different ways to play it. So, Doctor Strange, Magic, Special Doctor, you can play all of these effectively without allies. But I just think these ones do it very, very well as well, and don't lose out as much, and are just honestly really, really good for it, really interesting. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like, comment, subscribe, etc., etc. And I'll see you guys in the next one.